Some people are born to shine, and others the world tries to extinguish before the spark even lights. But sometimes, a literal shock changes everything. It was a cloudy morning. The kind that weighs on your back as if the entire sky were collapsing. A wide avenue, upscale neighborhood, buildings with doormen who even call dogs sir. The asphalt, still damp from the early morning drizzle, reflected the city like a dirty mirror. And there, right there, between an overpriced coffee shop and an impatient honk, face-lipped, "Get out of the way, you lunatic," was the last shout before the dry sound of impact. The black car, imported, braked too late. Not enough time. The woman flew, literally, a skinny, fragile body hitting the hood as if it were paper. And then, silence. That kind of silence that only exists when death brushes by, but hasn't yet taken hold. The driver got out. Expensive. Suit. A watch worth more than a minimum wage per second. No insurance, but a panicked heart. He looked down, expecting to see a junkie, a drunk, someone without a name. But what he saw was the beginning of the end of his own ignorance. She was alive. Hurt, but alive. And even on the ground, even bleeding. She was holding tightly to a trash bag filled with scrap metal, crushed cans, plastic bottles, caps, nothing that someone normal would consider important. But in that gaze, there was something he couldn't explain. "Ma'am, are you okay? I didn't see you," he stammered. For the first time in his life, the woman tried to get up, but her body didn't respond. Blood trickled from her forehead, but her trembling hand still clutched the bag with such strength that it looked like she was protecting a child. "Help me, please. Don't let them take my things." He didn't understand. "What things? That's trash." She looked at him, but it wasn't a look of anger. It was pity, as if the poor one was him, and with a weak but firm voice, she answered, "You see trash, I see memories." That's when he froze. Something unsettled him, as if this woman knew more about life than all his MBS combined. He called an ambulance, tried to help. People filmed. Some laughed, others judged. Classic. And when the paramedics arrived to take the victim, he saw a sheet fall from the bag. A photo, yellowed, old, and there, at the center, was him, at 12 years old, next to the woman he had just run over. His heart stopped. His hands became clammy. It made no sense. Who was this woman? How did she have a photo of him when he was just a poor boy in the orphanage? And at that moment, he understood that morning's accident was no accident. It was fate settling a score. But what link could exist between a spoiled millionaire and a beggar who collected garbage and secrets? There are things that fade from memory, but never disappear from the heart. And there are images that, when they resurface, tear the soul like a knife with no tip. The woman was taken to the hospital, unconscious, cracked ribs, scrapes, mild cranial trauma, but alive. A miracle, some said. I say, the obstinacy of those who still have a mission on this earth. The man, let's call him Dr. Roberto, remained there, standing, holding the photo as if it were dynamite. He immediately recognized it. The photo came from the children's wing of the Sao Joaquim orphanage, in the northern zone, a place where he had lived until the age of 13, when he was adopted by a rich family who, curiously, had worked hard to erase all traces of his past. And there she was, the woman he had hit, but younger, well-dressed, smiling, with him in her arms, like a mother. Impossible, he murmured, trembling. He returned home, but didn't sleep. He spent the night rummaging through boxes he hadn't opened since adolescence. Small letters, report cards, scribbled drawings, nothing. No clue about the identity of that woman. The next morning, he went to the hospital, tried to see her, but she was still in intensive care, with no expected release date, and worse, no ID name. No one knew. The record read unknown, public road accident, a ghost with a forgotten name. But as he waited at reception, he saw something unexpected. A cleaning lady, pushing a mop cart, looked at him and said, "You're Dona Sita's boy, aren't you?" He froze. Dona Sita, she talked about you sometimes. She said she had a son who was taken from her, that he had been taken away, but that one day the world would put you face to face again. He went pale. "What do you mean? A son?" "Well, sir, the woman you ran over, that's Sita. She collects stuff near the Liberdade Market, sleeps in cardboard boxes. but never lets go of her bag of trash, because in that bag is her whole life. He didn't know whether to sit down or run away. Sita, the one he vaguely remembered in his dreams, that voice that sang off-key a lullaby he thought he had imagined. But she said I was her son. The woman looked at him with tenderness. She said she lost her son, that he was put up for adoption without her consent when she was institutionalized. Because they said she was crazy, Roberto felt the world tilt crazy, institutionalized, forced adoption. What had started as a car accident now seemed like the reunion of two souls broken by an injustice, hidden for decades. But why had this been kept from him? Why had no one ever told him anything? And above all, why had she never looked for him? Or had she tried and been stopped? This was just the beginning. They say if you seek, you shall find. But no one warns that what you find might be worse than what you lost. And that's what the famous Dr. Roberto discovered when he decided to stir up the past with too short a stick. That same afternoon, he got in his car and drove straight to his adoptive parents' house. No warning, no appointment. He arrived, electronic gate, manicured garden, a house worthy of a decoration magazine, everything perfect, except for the truth. He was welcomed with the same fake smile as always from his adoptive mother, Dona Eunice, a distinguished woman, eyes like ice, velvet voice hiding blades. Roberto, my son. What a nice surprise. Come in. Would you like some hibiscus tea? He got straight to the point. Did you ever know a woman named Sita? She froze for a second. Almost imperceptible, but enough. Sita. Which Sita? My son. The one who held me in her arms when I was in the orphanage. The one who, according to a woman at the hospital, said she was my mother. The cup trembled. Tea spilled, and silence settled in like a muted scream. Roberto, listen. There are things from the past that don't deserve to be unearthed. The life you have today is the fruit of luck. Don't ruin it with the delusions of a tramp. Delusion, she has a photo of me in her arms, one that even I don't have. How do you explain that? That's when the adoptive father stepped in, Dr. Ernesto, a retired judge, man of grave voice and a kind of authority that imposed silence. She was unbalanced. She was institutionalized. She lost custody. The judge determined you were in danger. We did what was best for you, period, without ever telling me. You erased my origins as if I were garbage. The old man didn't flinch. A family is the ones who take care of you, not those who bleed on sidewalks. You are our son now, and you always have been. Roberto left with more doubts than when he had arrived, but a certainty burned in his chest. The story they told him was a half-truth, and a half-truth is the worst kind of lie. Back in his car, he saw a notification on his phone. The woman, that so-called Sita, had been moved out of intensive care, still weak, but conscious. His heart raced. Maybe she was the only one who could still tell the truth. But did she want to? Did she remember? Or was silence also part of the price she had been forced to pay to be erased from history? And if she started talking, who else might fall with her? Asked some people speak with their eyes. And in that hospital room, one single look was enough to tell 30 years of silence. Roberto entered quietly. The room was simple. Sita lay there, weak, but alive. At four in her arm, a worn-out face. But her eyes, though, her eyes looked like old photographs. Yellowed, but intact. And when she saw him enter, she didn't need to say a word. She smiled. A broken smile. The kind you hold on for life, hoping for a moment that might never come. You grew up, she whispered. Roberto froze. His throat tightened. He sat on the edge of the bed, not knowing what to say. All he could manage was to show her the photo. That's us, isn't it? She nodded slowly. You were 2 years old there. You had colic all the time, and threw tantrums. You only slept in my arms. Do you remember the little song? He closed his eyes. The melody came back. He didn't know from where, but it came back. That song, it was real. Of course it was real. I made it up for you. Sleep, my little angel, outside the world bites. Do you remember? He cried, quietly, without sound, the kind of tears that flow on the inside. Why did you disappear? Why didn't you ever look for me? She took a deep breath, as if gathering the strength life had stolen from her. I tried, my son. God knows I tried. But I was poor, alone, and they said I was crazy. They institutionalized me when you got sick and I didn't have money for medicine. They said it was neglect. It wasn't true. I just had no other choice. When I got out, you had already been adopted, and they told me you gone far away, that it was better to forget. Roberto felt his stomach twist. Who told you that? She closed her eyes. People in suits, a judge, a social worker, even a priest. They said I was a danger. I was just poor, Roberto. That's all. He took her hand for the first time, and she squeezed his, as if to say, I'm here, and they were there. Both of them, after years, finally reunited. But the reunion tasted like dried blood, old resentment, lost time. Did you wait for me all this time, every day, every time I heard a car brake? I thought, it's him. When I saw a shadow on the sidewalk, is it him? Roberto lowered his head. Forgive me for not looking for you. You couldn't have known. And even without knowing, you came. And there, in that cold room, where life had nearly gone out, an old bond was reborn. But the most important part was still to come, because Sita had much more to tell. Things no one could have imagined. Things involving money, power, and big names. There's something you need to know, my son, and maybe it will change everything you believe. Roberto swallowed hard. What is it? She looked at the ceiling, let out a deep sigh. Your adoption wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. Some people climb the ladder by stepping where no one looks. And there are family names that shine on facadas, but hide rot in the basement. Roberto could no longer breathe properly. That phrase still echoed like a funeral drum. Your adoption was a plan. He asked Sita to explain. Even though he feared the answer, she adjusted her pillow, looked him straight in the eyes, and spoke slowly, as if reopening a wound that had never truly healed. You were the only child the adoptive father couldn't have. Roberto frowned. What do you mean? Dr. Ernesto, he couldn't have children, and his wife, Dona Eunice, didn't want to adopt just any child. She wanted a handsome boy, healthy, with no stain on the name. That's how the social worker came to me. I was still institutionalized, fighting to prove I wasn't crazy. But they had already decided. They gave me the papers, one for institutionalization and another to relinquish custody. I signed the wrong one. They knew. They did it on purpose. She cried, but silently, like someone who's tired of screaming. Into the void. They chose you, Roberto. They stole you. He remembered birthday parties with hired clowns, expensive trips, gifts he never asked for. And now, all of that seemed bought with lies. But why? Why me? Because you were no one's child, and everyone's. Born on the street, raised in an orphanage, no close relatives, a beautiful boy, with big eyes perfect for the adoption photo. They just didn't count on the mother being stubborn. Roberto breathed heavily. Each of Sita's words was a sledgehammer blow to the wall of his life, that wall where he had hung diplomas, awards, achievements, everything now trembling. Did you know where I was all this time? She nodded. I knew, but I couldn't get close. They got a court order, said I was a threat. When I tried to see you after school, the security guards beat me. After that, I stopped trying. All I had left was to collect what others threw away, and to piece together memories from the trash. He was filled with silent rage, but not at Sita, at what had been done to her, to him, to the truth. They could still be prosecuted. I'm a lawyer. She interrupted him with a sad smile. You really think they left traces? They erased everything, and those who spoke too much disappeared. What do you mean, disappeared? She hesitated. The social worker who tried to help me died in an accident. The nurse who let me see you in secret was transferred and never seen again. And a priest who listened to my confession vanished. Roberto swallowed with difficulty. What once seemed like a story of abandonment now looked like a conspiracy, and a question that refused to go away. How far had his adoptive parents gone to secure their perfect child? Deep down, he already knew the answer. But what came next would prove the rabbit hole went even deeper. There are silences worth gold, and others that cost lives. Roberto was back in his mansion, but for the first time, the place felt more like a prison than a palace. He entered the office, locked the door, and began rummaging through. His father's safe, the code, the same as always, the wedding date, the irony of love used as a password to hide lies. Inside, folders, contracts, deeds. But one, in particular, caught his eye. CJ or file. Roberto opened it. It was him. Full name, Date of birth, medical records, and reports. Reports written by a certain judicial psychologist LG. She stated the biological mother showed signs of emotional instability, but with a red pen note, the patient is lucid, responds coherently, claims custody with affection and emotional bond, and below that, recommendation, assisted reconciliation with the child. But that page had been crossed out with black marker. Someone had tried to erase it, but they hadn't fully managed to wipe out the truth. There was also a letter, handwritten, from Sita herself, addressed to him, never sent, dated 1996. My son, if you ever receive this letter, it means God allowed it. I'm not perfect, nor rich, but I've loved you since the day I first heard you cry. Forgive me for not being there. Forgive me for not protecting you. I never gave up on you, your mother, Sita. Roberto dropped to his knees. This letter weighed as much as an entire world. In the middle of the night, he couldn't sleep. He went to his adoptive parents' bedroom, didn't knock. He opened the door and spoke firmly. You erased the wrong page. You erased the woman who gave me life, and you thought I'd never find out the truth. Eunice woke up, startled. Ernesto simply opened his eyes, calm as always. You don't understand, Roberto. We did this for you. No, you did it for yourselves, for your status, for your vanity. I was a display piece. Ernesto sat on the bed, his voice cold. You were a doomed child. We gave you a chance, and you took advantage of it. I didn't ask for a chance. I asked for the truth. He left, slamming the door, got in the car, went straight to the hospital. He arrived in the middle of the night, entered Sita's room. She was sleeping, but even so, he held her hand. You didn't lose a son. They tried to steal me from you. And now, I'm going to give your name back the truth it deserves. But what he didn't know was that someone had already discovered he had opened the safe, and this story was far from over. Some people show up when they shouldn't, and when the past is buried under concrete, every curious soul becomes a threat. The next morning, Roberto returned to the hospital with a bouquet of flowers and a bag of clean clothes for Sita, but upon arriving in the lobby, he noticed something strange. Two men in suits, too discreet to pass as visitors, were staring at him, one tapping on his phone, the other, older, wore a black leather watch, the old kind, with a worn strap and a simple dial, but his face was not simple at all. It was the same Roberto had seen in old photos of the adoption foundation that handled his case. That's Dr. Alvaro, he whispered as he recognized him. Former director of the foundation, officially retired, unofficially, handsomely paid to forget. Roberto took a deep breath, pretended not to notice, went straight to his mother's room. But when he got there, the bed was empty. Where is she? He asked the nurse. She was transferred, by order of the administration, transferred to another hospital. Which hospital? They didn't tell us. They said it was a confidential case, that there was an ongoing investigation. The ground dropped beneath him. Roberto ran downstairs, back to reception. The two men had disappeared. Only a shirt had been forgotten on a chair, and inside it, a sheet of paper with the court's letterhead and the name, transfer order, Maria Apricida Alves. He took a photo. He knew something was wrong. He went back to his car, called half a dozen contacts from the legal world. No one knew about any transfer, let alone a confidential investigation. That's when it hit him. They were trying to make Sita disappear again, but this time fast. He went home, turned on his computer, searched public hospitals in the city. Nothing. Then checked psychiatric clinics. Bingo. One of them, located in a rural zone, had admitted a patient with a similar name, Maria C. Alves. Diagnosis, schizophrenic episode, involuntary commitment. Roberto slammed his fist on the table. It was the same trick. Once again, they were trying to make her look insane, and he knew what came next. Once isolated, medicated, without a lawyer, one simple report would be enough, and poof, she'd disappear from life, from records, from history. But this time, there was a problem. She wasn't alone anymore, and the name Roberto Costa Jr. was no longer just the name of a showroom boy. It was now the name of a son ready to confront those who had always controlled everything, but he still didn't know that touching this nest of vipers was going to cost him dearly. There's a moment when the truth can no longer be held in, and when it explodes, those who always ruled begin to tremble. 2 days later, Roberto stood before the infamous rural clinic, surrounded by trees, isolated, with a tall wall and an electronic gate that looked more like a prison than a hospital, a place designed to hide people and make them be forgotten. He knocked hard, showed his ID. They ignored him. "Do you have an appointment?" the receptionist asked, without even looking up. "No, I've come to get my mother." Name of the patient, Maria Aparecida Alves, institutionalized through a false report. "I'm a lawyer, and if you don't open this door immediately, I'll be back with an injunction and the entire press." The young woman trembled, disappeared through a side door. A few minutes later, a man in a white coat appeared, looking tired and smug. "Dr. Roberto, no need for that tone. We follow protocols here. Your mother was admitted based on a psychiatric report issued by a licensed professional." "Which professional?" "Dr. Alvaro Santiago." Roberto smirked. "How curious. The same one who signed my adoption, and who, if I dig into his record, appears in half a dozen complaints about irregularities with minors in the 90s. The man gulped nervously. "Well, we need more time to reassess. Time is what you don't have. I have a search warrant in hand signed by Judge Santana, an old classmate. If my mother doesn't walk out that door in 10 minutes, I'll bring this place down with lawsuits and press coverage." Silence. 5 minutes later, the back door opened. Sita appeared, drugged, wearing oversized clothes. Dazed, "Son." He ran to her, hugged her, smelled the medication, sweat, and neglect. "It's okay now, Mom. I came to get you. They'll never lay a hand on you again." She cried, but couldn't even speak. Roberto put her in the car, called a trusted clinic, private, paid cash. And that same night, he recorded a video, eyes red, a voice firm. "My name is Roberto Costa Jr. I'm a lawyer, and this is my mother, Sita. For 30 years, they lied about her. They said she was crazy, that she abandoned me. It's all false. She was a victim, like so many others. I was stolen, and now I want everyone to know what this rotten elite did." He posted it. The video went viral within hours. People commented, shared. Similar stories surfaced in the comments. But with the truth exposed, the backlash came. The next morning, Roberto received a notice. The family business was under investigation for tax fraud. An anonymous report, a coincidence, on the very same day as the video. "They're trying to silence you, my son," said Sita, sitting at the clinic, her eyes regaining the glow of earlier days. "Let them try. Now, we have a voice." But what he didn't know was that the next dirty trick from the adoptive family would be even filthier, and it would involve a name he never imagined being dragged into it, his own. There's worse than having your past stolen. It's having your future stolen too. And when lies come on letterhead, our name becomes currency. Roberto woke up to an anxious call from his accountant. "Doctor, have you recently signed a new power of attorney?" "Of course not." "Why?" "Because it appeared in the tax records last night, with your digital signature, authorizing operations in the family holding, including asset sales in your name. Impossible. I don't even use that signature anymore since I changed my digital certificate." "Exactly, but it was used. And not just that. Shares have already been transferred. There are already bank movements. They're going to implicate you in money laundering." Roberto felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He called the bank, tried to block it, but it was too late. All documents were already filed, and, the height of irony, in the name of a company, with the initials ECJ, Eunice Costa Jr. They even used my name in the company name. That same day, he received a subpoena, formal accusation, corporate fraud and tax evasion, and who signed as plaintiff? Dr. Ernesto Costa, his own adoptive father. It was then that Roberto understood they were throwing him to the lions, using his name as a scapegoat, burning him in the public square, as if he were the corrupt one, the imposter, the ungrateful son. He went back to the family home, stormed in. Without asking permission, he found them both sitting, calmly sipping coffee like nothing was happening. "You used me as a front man for the company," he shouted, holding the paper. Eunice didn't flinch. Ernesto calmly wiped his mouth with a napkin, like a judge ready to pronounce a sentence. "You stirred up too much. You exposed us. There are consequences. I'm your son. No, you were a project, a construction. And now you've become a risk. You're handing me over to justice to save your name. Dad, it wouldn't be the first time the truth must be sacrificed for the greater good." Roberto felt like fainting, but he stood his ground, took a deep breath, then smiled. A smile filled with fury and liberation. You think you have everything under control, but you forgot one thing. I have her who, the truth. Sita, my mother, and she's alive. She knows the names, the dates, the stories, and she's ready to talk. I'm putting her on camera, on national TV. You think it'll destroy me? No, it's you it will destroy, Ernesto. For the first time, Tremble. Eunice dropped her cup, but it was already delayed. Roberto left, got in his car, went straight to a television network. He scheduled an interview. With Sita at his side, and there, all of Brazil would hear what they had tried to bury for decades. But what no one expected was the confession she would make live on air, a confession even Roberto wasn't prepared for. There are things we keep out of fear, and others we don't say because just thinking about them hurts. And Sita carried one of those things. The studio was completely silent. The lights were on. The cameras were rolling. The journalist breathed deeply, eyes glowing with that special look only seen in those who know they're about to make history. We are live with lawyer Roberto Costa Jr. and his biological mother, Maria Aparecida Alves, known for decades only as Sita, an invisible woman who now has a name, a face, and a voice. Sita trembled slightly, but she held on. She wore a simple, light blue dress, hair tied back, her face still marked by suffering. But her eyes burned like an old fire reignited. Dona, Sita, the entire country wants to know, why are you telling your story only now? She inhaled, looked at her son, and began, because only now someone wanted to listen. The audience, on the other side of the screen, held their breath. They locked me away like I was crazy because I was poor. They took my son from me. They used him to make themselves look like a respectable family. And I stayed silent until today. The journalist nodded. And what do you have to say today? Now that everyone is listening, she closed her eyes for a second, swallowed hard, and said, I have more to say. There's a name no one has mentioned, a name that was the true mastermind behind all this, who threatened me, who paid me to disappear, and who was also Roberto's father. Silence. Roberto turned to her, confused. What do you mean, Mom? She lowered her head. Roberto, you weren't just stolen. You were hidden from your own father. The journalist's eyes widened. Who is it? She looked straight into the camera, without blinking. Ernesto Costa, the man who raised you, is also the man who conceived you. But he never wanted to acknowledge you. He used me when I was just a cleaning lady at the courthouse. He used me, then abandoned me when I got pregnant. He made me promise to disappear. When I didn't, he erased me. Roberto felt the world collapse, the ground vanish, his knees buckle. You're saying Ernesto is my biological father? She nodded, eyes full of tears. And your adoptive mother always knew. The set was frozen. The journalist didn't know what to say. The technician was crying. The audience at home was silent. Roberto looked at the camera, then at his mother, and could only whisper, I was adopted by my own father. It wasn't adoption, my son. It was possession, disguised as charity. The broadcast was cut. The producer signaled off screen, pressure from higher-ups, but the damage was done. A few hours later, Ernesto Costa's name was everywhere on social media. Memes, outrage, protests. The foundation where he adopted children became the target of an investigation. And Sita, a symbol. But Roberto didn't say a word that night. He sat silently in the dressing room, staring blankly, because sometimes what destroys us isn't the lie. It's discovering that the monster we've been fighting carries our own blood. Some inherit a fortune, others inherit wounds, but some, even born in error, choose to do what's right. And that's what Roberto did the day after the interview. He woke up with his phone flooded with notifications, news channels, social media, lawyers, journalists, even politicians wanting to promote themselves through his story. Everyone had a question. Everyone wanted a piece. But he wanted only silence. He looked in the mirror, saw his own face, and, for the first time, asked himself, who am I? Because if Ernesto was his father, and Eunice knew, then everything he had lived was just a setup, a staged adoption, a theater of love to hide the shame of having fathered. A child with a cleaning lady, a child born outside their class. He put on simple clothes, jeans, cotton shirt, left without a driver, took the subway. Yes, the man who used to ride in an armored car now walked among the people. He arrived at the town hall of the East District, took a number, sat, waited. When his number was called, he went straight to the desk. I want to amend my birth certificate. The clerk frowned. A spelling mistake, a life mistake. I want to remove the name Costa and take my mother's name, Alves. She widened her eyes. You're going to give up the Costa name. No, I'm giving up the lie and owning the truth. A few hours later, he walked out with the new certificate in hand, Roberto Alves. He took a deep breath, as if he had just been reborn, as if, finally, his blood matched his name. Back at the clinic, Sita was sitting on the veranda, wind on her face, eyes closed, listening to the birds sing. Are you feeling better, Mom? She opened her eyes, smiled, louder, as if a truck was lifted off my shoulders. Me too. He showed her the paper. Roberto Alves. That's my name now. The one you gave me. The only one that's mine. She cried, but it was a beautiful cry of relief. You don't know what that means to me. Yes, I do, and it will mean a lot to others too, because now, Mom, I'm going to create a foundation in your name to help women like you, to make sure other Citas are not erased. She clutched her chest. Tremble, you didn't have to. Yes, I did. I can't change the past, but I can prevent it from happening again. That same day, he began the paperwork. Sita Alves Foundation, protecting vulnerable mothers, investigating forced adoptions, providing shelter for women persecuted by the system. It was just the beginning, but deep down, it was a rebirth. And while the Costas tried to cover their tracks, fled justice, and save appearances, Sita and Roberto began writing a new story. But there was still one last reckoning to come, because Ernesto didn't intend to fall without a fight. Asterisk, there are men who believe money is eternal. But when death draws near, even arrogance begins to cough, and Ernesto Costa, the great magnet, began to decline the moment the truth came out. Overnight, he lost his seat on boards of directors, international partnerships, million-dollar contracts. The elite pretended they no longer knew him. His name, once synonymous with prestige, became front-page scandal. A judge falsified an adoption to hide an illegitimate child. A system of silence and forced institutionalizations. The castle was collapsing, and fast. Roberto no longer sought to see his father. He didn't call. He didn't sue. Didn't ask for compensation. He let time do what justice couldn't yet, make the guilty grow old from the inside. But it was Sita who got the call. Dona Sita, Dr. Ernesto asked to see you. He says he has only a few days left. She stayed silent, then whispered, he's had his days numbered for a long time. He was just pretending to be immortal, and yet, she went. She entered the mansion where, for 30 years, she hadn't even been allowed near. The same place where he had raised his own son as an adoption. The house smelled of mold and faded arrogance. Ernesto lay in bed, a hospital room improvised in his old office, emaciated, sunken face, tubes, oxygen, his eyes, still hard. Sita stopped at the door. She didn't cry, didn't tremble. She simply looked. No nurse to throw me out today, huh? He coughed. You've always been sarcastic, and you've always been a coward. Silence. I was wrong, he said. But I loved that boy the best I could. No, you loved him when it suited you. Showroom love. Appearances. That boy went to sleep hungry for truth, even surrounded by luxury. Ernesto extended his trembling hand. With difficulty, he pulled out a folder. Here is the will. I updated it yesterday. Everything goes to Roberto. She raised an eyebrow. And you think money heals abandonment? No, but it's all I can leave. All that's left. Sita took the document. Read it quickly. Then she tore it up in front of him. He doesn't need your name. And now, not even your money. Ernesto cried, not from remorse, but from powerlessness. For the first time in his life, he couldn't buy redemption. Sita turned her back. Goodbye, Ernesto. Prepare yourself, because up there, the judge doesn't answer the private line. 2 days later, the news came. Ernesto Costa was dead, with no public wake. Roberto received the news in silence, looked out the window, then said, it was about time, but the lesson remains. That same day, The Cedar Alvis Foundation was officially inaugurated, with dozens of women assisted, volunteer lawyers, and a plaque at the entrance. Here, no one is born invisible. Here, every mother has a name, but the story still had one. Final page to turn. Because deep down, the last chapter was no longer about them. It was about what they had left behind in this world. Some stories end in silence, but others become seeds. And that's what this whole drama became. Fertile ground to grow a different humanity. 3 years had passed. The Cedar Alvis Foundation had grown. It had started in a small borrowed room, then became an entire building in the old downtown. Psychologists, lawyers, volunteers, donations. Women who once lived in fear now grabbed the microphone, told their truth, and looked into the eyes of those who used to look away. Cedar had stepped back from daily work. She had become a symbol. She didn't like the word heroine. She preferred to say she was stubborn, and she was. Every Monday, she insisted on sitting at the foundation's entrance with a little bottle of coffee and watching the comings and goings. "It's crazy, huh?" she would say. The same hands that picked up garbage now plant dignity. Roberto, still loyal to the cause. He worked pro bono in forced adoption cases, refused awards, refused front-page features, but accepted hugs, and those he received many. One afternoon, Cedar took him to a square, an old square, where she said she had slept for many years. The bench was still there, the ground cracked, the lamppost crooked, but the two of them, hand in hand, looked like royalty. "On the throne of memory, it was here that I dreamed you'd come for me," she said, "and I came. You took your time, but you came. It's just that life gave me the wrong GPS." She laughed. They sat on the bench, a good silence, a gentle breeze. A boy ran by, smiling, selling candy. "A chocolate, sir," Roberto bought. To die, he gave one to his mother, bit into the other, then looked at the boy and said, "Study hard, okay? Your future is worth more than loose change." "Yes, sir." The boy replied with a smile that looked like Roberto's at 12. Cedar watched, then whispered, "There are things we don't understand at the time, only later." "Like what?" "Like why life hurt us so much. It was so we'd be strong enough to ease the pain of others." The sky began to darken, but they stayed, unhurried. The city, for the first time, seemed to hold their story, because on that park bench, there was no orphan anymore, nor a beggar, only a mother and her son. Hold out, there are places that don't appear on any map, but they live in the souls of those who pass through them. And for Roberto, the San Joaquin Orphanage was that place, the cradle of forgetting, the birthplace of silence. He returned there, not as an orphan, but as a fulfilled man, a lawyer, Cedar's son, heart scarred, but not numbed. The gate was still rusty iron, the entrance the same, but the plaque had fallen. Weeds climbed up the walls, as if trying to cover the wounds of childhood. "This was my room," he said, pointing to the second floor. "I shared it with 5 others. We slept on bunk beds with no mattresses." He held an envelope in his hand. Inside, the project to transform that abandoned building into a community school for children in vulnerable situations. Chosen name, Maria Apricida Alvis Popular School. Yes, the name of the mother the world had tried to erase. He entered with the engineer, showed the structure, the hallways, and in each room, he explained what he dreamed of seeing there: a library, a playroom, an art workshop. "This one will be the silence room, where no child will be interrupted when they want to tell their story." She smiled. "That's beautiful, Doctor. What's beautiful is knowing that here, where they silence me, the voices of many invisible children will be born." Outside, a group of neighborhood mothers waited. They knew who he was, but they didn't ask for selfies. They asked for advice, help, direction. And he gave it, because now Roberto was that, a compass for the lost who, like him, were born with the wrong zip code. While the papers were being signed, Cedar watched from afar. "I never imagined my name would end up on the front of a school. Your name, Mom, that's where the story begins, and that's where it continues." She wept gently. And that afternoon, among cracked bricks and walls marked by decades of neglect, the future was born. But there was still one last thing, something time doesn't destroy, a word that, even whispered, can rebuild worlds: forgiveness. And it would come from an unexpected place. There are pardons we don't speak, we feel them, and sometimes they come late. But just in time, 1 week after the school's inauguration, Roberto received a letter. No return address, yellow paper, shaky handwriting. But he recognized immediately who it was from. It was from Eunice Costa, the woman who had raised him, the one who had called Sita a tramp and erased the truth as carefully as one polishes a floor. He took a deep breath, opened it, read it, in silence, sentence by sentence. Roberto, I know you never want to see me again, and I understand. I was a coward, an accomplice, and yes, we knew who you were from the beginning. We knew who your mother was, but we didn't know who you would become. I wanted to protect you from scandal, from shame, from your origins. I was taught to hide cracks, not to face them. And when I realized that the love we gave you was built on control, it was already too late. But know this, I love you in my clumsy way, but I love you, and today, seeing who you've become, I understand it wasn't us who shaped you. It was her, Sita, the memory, the absence. She gave you the heart, and you taught me that the truth hurts, but frees, forgive. Me, if you can. Eunice. Double quotes. Roberto stared at the paper for a long time. He didn't cry. He didn't smile. He simply did what had to be done. He understood. Forgiveness, sometimes, is that a breath from the bottom of the soul's well, a belated sign from someone who didn't know how to love properly, but loved as best they could. That night, he went to Sita's room. She was sewing, a little patchwork cloth with colorful threads. Grandma stuff, Solat piece stuff. Look, what I got, he said, handing her the letter. She read it, in silence, then raised her eyes and asked, Are you going to forgive her? I think so. Because if we don't forgive, we keep carrying, and I've carried too much weight in this life. She nodded, proudly. Then it's done. Forgiveness granted. Outside, it started to rain, but it was a soft rain, warm, the kind that washes without hurting. And that night, for the first time, Roberto slept whole. No questions. No anger. No emptiness in his chest. He slept knowing who he was. Son of Sita, a true man, clean name, clean story. And if you've made it this far, my dear, always remember this. There are people the world throws away, but there are souls that neither time, nor lies, nor abandonment can erase. Because as I always say, there are those who are born invisible, but no one was born to live erased.